Imagine being one of the highest authorities in your state, a man trusted to decide the fate of others in a courtroom, only to be treated like a criminal on the doorstep of your own home. That's exactly what happened to Judge Marcus Hill, a respected black judge who had spent his entire life fighting for justice. On a quiet evening when all he wanted was rest, flashing lights and police commands turned his driveway into a stage of humiliation. But what the officers didn't know was that their arrogance was about to backfire in the most unforgettable way, leaving them stunned and their careers hanging by a thread. Marcus Hill was not just a judge. He was a symbol of perseverance. Growing up in a small working-class neighborhood, he had faced doubt at every turn. Teachers told him not to aim too high, and peers teased him for dreaming too big, but his mother's voice carried him forward. Never let them decide who you are. He studied harder than anyone else, graduated at the top of his class, and eventually rose through the ranks of law to become one of the youngest black judges in the state. For Marcus, his home in an affluent suburb wasn't simply a mansion, it was proof that determination could break barriers. Neighbors admired his composure, lawyers respected his authority, and his community saw him as a beacon of what was possible. But beneath that success lay a painful truth. Titles and wealth could not shield him from the color of his skin. On a late evening after a grueling day in court, Marcus pulled into his driveway. His sedan rolled slowly toward the gate, the metal bars opening like always. But before he could enter, red and blue lights exploded in his rearview mirror. Two police. Cars swerved behind him, boxing him in. In an instant, the authority he commanded in court was stripped away. To the officers approaching with flashlights and suspicion, he was not Judge Marcus Hill. He was just another black man in a rich neighborhood. And that's when the nightmare began. The first officer barked at him to roll down his window. Marcus complied, his voice calm as he explained, "This is my home." But the officers didn't buy it. One sneered, "This car doesn't belong here. Step out of the vehicle." Dressed in his tailored suit, briefcase beside him, Marcus stepped out slowly, his dignity intact, but his heart heavy. The second officer hovered near his holster, treating him like a dangerous intruder instead of a homeowner. They fired questions at him. Who lived here? Why was he here? Did he have proof of residency? Marcus offered his driver's license, but they studied it with doubt, whispering as though the address could be a lie. The humiliation deepened as neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some even recording on their phones. A jogger stopped nearby, staring as though Marcus were guilty of something unspeakable. The sting of injustice was sharp. This was his sanctuary, his reward for decades of struggle. Yet he was being tried and convicted on the street without a single shred of evidence against him. Minutes stretched painfully. The officers threatened to call backup, muttering about trespassing. Marcus felt a familiar anger rise inside him, but he remembered his mother's words. Never let them drag you down to their level. So he stood tall, silent, waiting for the moment he knew would come. When they demanded more proof, Marcus slowly reached into his briefcase. The officers stiffened, hands inching toward their weapons. But instead of a weapon, Marcus pulled out a sleek leather case embossed with golden letters, State of X Judiciary. He flipped it open. Inside was his official judge's badge and identification card. The emblem gleamed in the harsh glare of the flashlights, its authority undeniable. The air froze. Silence fell as both officers stared at the badge, their confident smirks wiped clean. They had stopped not just any man, but Judge Marcus Hill, one of the highest judicial authorities in the state. The first officer's hand dropped from his holster. The second's face drained of color. Their arrogance crumbled, replaced with panic. They stammered apologies, words tripping over themselves as they tried to cover their mistake. But Marcus didn't move. He didn't raise his voice or lash out. Instead, he let the weight of the moment crush them. His silence, his calm stare, was louder than any courtroom gavel. Finally, he spoke. His words were slow, steady, and devastating. "This is my home. This is my property. And tonight, you've shown me exactly how little that means to you." The officers shifted uncomfortably, knowing their actions could cost them dearly. The jogger who had stopped now whispered to a neighbor. Cameras clicked from phones in nearby windows. The humiliation they had intended for him now turned squarely on them. They scrambled to explain it was just routine procedure, but Marcus cut through their excuses with one final sentence. "You may go now, but remember this moment, because I will." The officers retreated quickly to their cruisers, the flashing lights dimming as they sped away. But the damage had already been done. Marcus entered his home in silence, the gate closing behind him like a final verdict. He placed his briefcase on the table, sat down, and felt the weight of the night pressing heavily on his shoulders. He thought of the countless ordinary black men and women who endured the same humiliation every day, without a badge of authority to shield them, without a title to turn the tables. News of the incident spread fast. Neighbors' recordings hit social media, sparking outrage. The image of a black judge, stopped at his own home, became a national headline. Commentators asked, if justice itself can be treated this way, what chance does anyone else have? For Marcus, the answer was painful but clear. Success does not erase prejudice. Titles and robes cannot protect dignity when society still sees only skin, and so the story leaves us with a question that demands reflection. If a judge can be stopped at his own doorstep, how many others suffer silently, unseen? And more importantly, what will we do about it? Because in the end, dignity is not something granted by power or position. It is a right that must be recognized, respected, and defended. For if justice can be humiliated, then justice itself is on trial.